Hello everyone and welcome to the Theatre Pitch podcast. This is the podcast where we take an online encyclopedia article at random and each of us come up with a pitch of how we would turn it into a theatre show. But this is an Ed Fringe special, so I am Jem, this is Sean.
Hello, hello, you alright?
You're enjoying going first again, aren't you?
No, my phone just went off and I've had to turn it, I forgot.
Professional.
Yeah. Hey.
Professional. This is Joe.
Oh yeah? My phone did not go off.
I'm now very paranoid that my phone's going to go off, but we will see. We live on the edge. And this is an Ed Fringe special, so we've got a very, very special guest, and that is Beth and Kate Tonkin. How are you, Beth?
Hello, I'm really, really well. I'm excited.
Yeah. Beth is an actor and a puppeteer that Sean and I worked with quite closely at university a number of years ago, but we don't count them anymore. So all of us went to university together, and then Beth has been to Edinburgh before as well. What show did you take? And when?
Oh gosh, it was right after I went to Birmingham Theatre School, and then when I graduated I got into a puppetry show called Heartwood. Which Sean came to see, and I think Joe as well came to see it.
No, Joe didn't come with me. There was someone else with me, but I don't really talk to them anymore.
Oh,
The drama of time.
Yeah, well, you know, it's been a long time.
See, the thing is, so poor is my recollection of uni that you could have told me that I went to see the show and I'd believe you.
No, it was a good. I really enjoyed the show. You know, I'm always like, oh, get the flyers for the good show. I've still got the flyer for the show. Still keep the good shows.
Oh, that's
brilliant, Sean.
And if I'd planned this really well, I would have had it ready, but I didn't.
See, it's the Fringe. We live improvising. That's what we do.
It was a nice flyer as well. It had it was like a gold, weren't it? And like a purple.
No, it was. Good guessing. It was green, and it had silhouetted trees, and then a picture of my puppet Eleanor on the back.
Did I come see this show?
Memory. No, you didn't, Gemma. No.
Okay.
I don't think I went to see this show, but I feel like I was flyered for it.
I was definitely flyered for it.
I feel like I remember this flyer, even though I'm pretty certain I didn't see the show.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't have recognised you if you were flyered for it, because I was puppeteering, so I wouldn't have been looking up.
Yeah. That's fantastic. And sure, yeah, and it's quite fun because we have a little bit of a history of puppeteering at Fringe as well with our 2016 show, which puppeteering at the Fringe during flyering is one of the best and worst things you can do, I think. Worst thing for the puppet, but best thing for making an easy job to get people's attention.
Oh yeah, it is. Yeah, people immediately stop and talk to you, and parents encourage their kids to come up to you, which is good, because then normally when you're flying and you don't have a puppet, they're just like, no, go away, leave my kid alone.
The only time I've ever had a puppet or a puppet-like thing, because at one point I was given somebody's face mask from the show that I was flying, and they were like, it's a penguin, just use it as a puppet. And I was like, okay, sure. Both of those times the show was not appropriate for children, but the parents refused to accept that piece of information. And when I was like, no, this isn't a show appropriate for 4-year-olds, they would turn around and go, why not? And I'd go, all of the usual reasons why it's probably more X-rated than child-friendly.
Who knows, maybe what they weren't asking was, why isn't it appropriate for children, and more, why didn't you make it appropriate for them? Maybe that's what they meant by why not.
Naked cabaret, that's all I'm saying. Yeah, buddy, it was a great Fringe.
Where did the puppet go?
On his face. It was this whole, spiritual penguin thing that was absolutely beautiful, but when you recount it in any kind of way, to anybody who wasn't there, you just sort of start to go, was I hallucinating? Is this good? But in the moment it was like, this is a really special show and a really special moment. But yeah, naked cabarets.
Oh my gosh, that's a bold move. It's a bold move.
Yeah. I'm not even gonna say.
In my head, he's just got out the shower one morning. He's like, you know what? Looking in the mirror, and he's like, I need a penguin, and then I've got a Fringe show.
That's all I need. I just need a penguin.
Yeah.
Oh, I just remember being told it's a show, and at the end there are penguins, and we will try and get naked with the audience. And I remember kind of going, "All right, this is a couple of years. This I think was a year out of university as well. So, or maybe the year I was still in third year, so I was still quite fresh to this idea of anything like that. So that was an experience.
Oh gosh, that sounds really scary. I would not want to see that.
It was a big space people could distance before they needed to. So this episode, getting back on track, is all about Joe. It's not all about Joe, but Joe, I'm handing it over to you to have your moment, to make it all about yourself.
Sorry, now you've said it. It's all about me, apparently.
We've got to change our pitches.
Now, today's podcast is all about Thrawn Janet. Thrawn Janet is a short story written in Scots by the author Robert Louis Stevenson. He wrote the story in the summer of 1881 while he stayed at the rented Kinnaird cottage in Kinnaird, a hamlet near Petoche, with his parents and wife. When he read the story to his wife Annie, she said of it that it sent a cold grue along my bones. And fair frightened Stevenson himself. And this is the last time this podcast I will do a Scottish accent, don't worry.
No, it's the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. You've got to do it all the time now.
But essentially, the plot concerns an old housekeeper for a preacher who is accused of witchcraft and consorting with the devil.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to say anything more in case it gives away spoilers for anyone's pitches.
I like it. How did we all find this article?
I found this one to be one of the easier ones because I think it's quite nice when you've actually got something with a plot. Because in many ways it means that you can kind of think less about what the show's about and more kind of have fun with how you're going to do it.
I totally agree, and usually I would be so enthralled, especially with this kind of narrative, because it's straight up my street, and I'm a huge fan of Stevenson. But I totally just went, you know what, I'm going to remove the plot.
I did.
Of course you did.
I changed it.
Yay!
I know I did. I don't use the plot.
Well, I'm glad I'm going to be the only one doing it then.
So Joe's secure in his idea. He doesn't have to have that anxiety of, oh my goodness, am I going to be out-pitched? Sean, how did you find it? Because you looked like, when Joe was reading it out, you did kind of look like maybe you'd gotten the wrong article again.
I'm just checking. There, in the story, there is like an exorcist, yeah, I'm good. I feel like I've got it. I feel like I'm confident.
Cool.
Yeah.
It's mostly confidence.
I feel like my show is amazing, and I'm going to have to edit it out because we're going to want to do it at the Fringe. And if we don't want to do my idea, then I've picked bad people to be friends with.
I honestly feel the same way about mine, and whether you guys like it or not, I'm going to be doing it at the Fringe.
I don't like it when you say that, Gemma. It gets me worried. Because you actually will do it.
I mean, I make things happen. How did you find it, Beth?
I loved it. I thought it was great, and yeah, I mean, I haven't heard yours yet, and I don't really need to know that mine is the best one. But I appreciate you guys taking the time to do your own pitches.
Ooh, fighting talk. I like it.
But yeah, I loved it. I thought, as much as I ignored the plot, I thought the plot was good, and it inspired me to come up with a better one, which is nice. And yeah, I could see many ways of doing it. It really lends itself to Fringe.
It does.
Nicely.
It does. So the big question now is, who's going to pitch first? Sean, I'm going to nominate you because you have, for as long as we've had this, this Wikipedia article, you've been boasting about how you have the best idea. And I would usually say, well, Beth just said that last, but she's a guest, so she's a friend, so I'm going to be kind. So Sean, take it away.
Right. Mine is going to be performed in the banquet room of the Banshee Labyrinth. Yeah?
Okay.
Are you with me? It's a stand-up show.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Now, one thing you've got to remember, in this story, I think there's an exorcism. Isn't there?
Sort of.
Sort of. I'm having it. There's an remember that? Okay, so It starts off as it's just advertised as your standard stand-up. It's like, oh, some geezer. It's like, yeah, I've got a comedy show on the Free Fringe. Come and have a look, and everyone's there. So it starts, and for 15 minutes, it's a really bad stand-up show. The jokes aren't hitting, and every now and then he just like talks to the back and he starts talking to himself like, come on, and then that slowly turns a bit creepy. So you know, like in Lord of the Rings when Gollum's talking to Gollum,
Yeah.
and Gollum's like, oh, you're a disgrace, blah 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 blah. So that you start seeing that on stage, you think, oh, this comedian's like losing it. He's like, the jokes aren't hitting, and then he starts like really just like attacking himself, but in like a really deep voice. Yep. So what the audience think? Oh, he's just losing it. But what's really happening is the devil's taking over his body.
Okay. Yeah.
And the devil's like, your jokes are crap, and he tries to do a joke. He's like, you're a disgrace, and he tries to do a joke, and he's like, as if you've put your mortgage all on this show. And then next thing you know, a geezer who can only be described looking like Van Helsing runs in, and it turns then from a stand-up show to a fight for this man's soul between the devil and Van Helsing in this tiny room, and that's my show, Gemma. It's what I've always wanted to do a horror show with the audience not knowing they're in a horror show.
I love it.
They think they're in a crap stand-up. They think, oh, he's having a go at himself, but no, it's the devil. And then Van Helsing comes in and saves the day.
I love it. I think ethically it's a little bit grey, but we like
No,
that.
it's not. No, it's not. Joe, we've walked into shows on the pretext that it's a different show and found out that it's not that show. It can be done on the Free Fringe.
Okay.
It's true.
There's no rules on the Free Fringe.
There's no rules. If they're not paying for tickets, then if they start kicking off, I can just say, oh, I think you came to the wrong room.
Yeah.
It is a free
Sort
show.
of a get out of jail free card there. I like it.
Yeah.
Now, Sean, I think on the basis of a rule established when I said before about doing a stand-up show, we do now need you to do some of the material from the show.
So I need crap jokes.
Yeah, we need you to tell like at least 3 crap jokes right now.
Okay. Why did the chicken cross the road?
I don't know. Why did the chicken cross the road?
Because he wanted to.
See, this is my level.
Yeah.
My
It's
favourite
gotta
joke.
be crap. If you think my jokes are crap, that's because they're meant to be at this point in time. Okay.
We haven't gotten to the Van Helsing bit yet.
Yeah, we haven't got.
Yeah. And what's Van
See-
Helsing's stand-up like?
He's
Does
not
he-
doing the stand-up.
Does he do any
He's-
stand-up at the end after he's beaten the devil?
No, we give him the bucket.
Would it ruin it if I saw your show and it was really crap stand-up, but I was still laughing my ass off?
Yeah, but I feel like we can do
Yeah.
crap stand-up.
Yeah, I do think the one thing with this is you've always got the risk that you kind of... It's the balancing act, isn't it? You don't want to play your hand too early, because then it just becomes that you've basically tricked people into seeing a different show. But at the same time, you don't want to keep it going for too long, or else people might just think this is a crap stand-up thing and leave before the fun bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're telling me you wouldn't want to see this show?
Well, I'm not saying I wouldn't. I'm just saying that because even if a show is truly awful, I will never leave a show early. Purely
but Joe-
because I think it's incredibly offensive to performers.
Say you're in a crap stand-up. Have you never been sat there thinking, oh, I really wish Van Helsing would run in now and have a fight with the devil? Have you never?
I've never had that particular thought. I might in future, but I'm just saying it as more. Yeah. Now
so
the
that's
thought's
my
there.
idea.
But I just mean you don't want to kind of like have it for too long that people just think it's a bad stand-up and leave before they find out that they've missed Van Helsing.
Well then, all full for them. You know what I mean? This idea, I don't know if I ever told you, like, my original idea that I came up with, like, in Aberystwyth. about how I wanted to do a zombie show, but not tell the audience they were in a zombie show.
I went to that show because I know that you ended up doing a zombie show, but everybody knew it was, and I've got a phobia of zombies, so I really didn't. No, because here's the thing, right? So it was this show that was like zombie apocalypse. It was a zombie attack on this hut that we were all put in, but because Sean and everybody else who created this show knew that I had a phobia of zombies and therefore would not go to the show. They said it was a horror show. No, nobody told me it was a zombie apocalypse show.
There was no zombies though. So Jeff, my original idea for that. Have I ever told you about the show that I pitched and someone said no, you can't do that because someone might get killed?
Yes.
This was that show. My original idea was to convince Curtain Call to do another night of their show, but about, like, at the interval, zombies attack.
Love it.
They sort of just be sit there watching the producers, and next thing you know, someone comes running in with, like, a bite, and there's zombies, and you're stuck in the Aragog Theatre. How cool would that be?
That would be terrifying.
I don't want... it'd be fun, wouldn't it?
No.
Planning this for years, Sean. This feels like when they interview, when the police talk to us about did we know that this was something he was plotting, we'll go, well, yes, if we think back to Aberystwyth times, he's always been plotting that.
I've had this idea for ages that if to do a good horror show in theatre, people need to not know that they're in a horror show.
See, I think that this is also a sign of how much time I've spent with both of you, Sean and Jem, that, Sean, I hear your idea and I think it's fantastic. But then there is the Jem-esque voice in the back of my head saying, well, you couldn't do this with something like the producers. The rights on it wouldn't allow you to make that much of a drastic change to the script.
I've made an impact on Joe's mind! Yay!
Jem has influenced me with producer brain.
Yay!
I am going to say one thing, though. You know, if you don't sell tickets for, like, one night, they don't really care what you do. We've just done, like, the Addams Family at work. And then they sent me an email saying, oh, was everything all right, blah, 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 blah. And I was just there like, oh, yeah, we didn't sell tickets because, you know, COVID and whatnot. And they were like, oh, yeah, sound cool, bye. They just don't care. If you don't sell tickets, if there's no money for them, they're like, yeah, sound, bye.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, pretty much. Just so long as we don't have to pay people to stick around.
And to be fair, who's ever been in a theatre show where there hasn't been some level of messing about on the last night? Or someone just deciding, screw it, it's the last night, I'm going to try that wild acting choice I've been waiting to try.
I remember at university, one of the last shows I did was Much Ado About Nothing, and I was cast as Dogberry. And we'd all started halfway through the run daring each other to do things wilder. And I had taken halfway through the run to every time I touched a drink, I would down it. And I regretted that on the last night when periodically, not every drink, but some of the drinks were pure vodka. Or at least I assume vodka, but they were alcoholic and very poisonous. And then, of course, at any opportunity as well, people tried to cream pie me. And, like, just, yeah, because it was like, it's Much Ado About Nothing. It's got an element of party and fair, and it was set in sort of a post-World War street carnival fair. So I was eating throughout the whole performance, which was fantastic and suited me down pat. But any opportunity that anybody could, they would slip and trip and throw a pie in my face. It was wild.
Never did anything as unprofessional as that. All of my shows I take very seriously. Especially when I've got a tech role. No one ever sees me on stage, ever.
I think that, Sean, you need to tell everybody about the kettle story.
I think Joe can do a better job than that. Joe was in the audience.
And you know, I think that once again, I think this is another time where I'm going to say the kettle story can wait for another podcast because we've once again got off track.
Oh, yeah, we have.
Oh, okay, next interval. Okay, who's going to pitch? I think because
one day we will do the kettle story, but not today.
Joe was just the party
The only people who know the kettle story is me, Joe, and Sarah Allen. It's clearly the only people who know that story.
And about 25 other people.
I don't think they were paying attention.
Joe, you are the one who just party pooped on the kettle story, so you are going next.
Fair enough. Well, there are a few things I want to establish for mine first. One is, we may all remember back at the beginning of this when I was reading out the article that I slipped into a Scottish accent. is something that if an English person does this, especially if an English improviser does this at the Fringe, it is a death sentence. You have about an hour to get out of there if you do a Scottish accent, because it doesn't matter how good it is, it's still an offence to do it.
But if you've got an hour, that's longer than your show, so you're grand.
Exactly. But essentially, this is one of two stories that Robert Louis Stevenson would write in Scott. And I want to try and... My pitch for this is essentially a show that would never be made by me, but that I would think is the only way to do it, which is a version of this play that puts the fear back into the English. Essentially, I want to make a play to terrify all the other acts that dare to come up to Scotland for this. So, I want to start by stating my venue for this is St Cuthbert's Church on the Lothian Road, because where else would this take place but in a church? And in the plot for it, we see that kind of after the essentially within the play, a woman is accused of witchcraft, and she is then, in an attempt to prove that she is a witch, some people attempt to drown her, but the preacher actually rescues her and has her abjure the devil before him. But from that day onwards, her neck is twisted or thrown from when they attempted to kind of like drown her in this pool and twisted it round. And I want to establish this in media res shortly after this, and this play will take place entirely over the priest's sermon that he is delivering on the devil. And I want to use all the tricks that we've seen through things like the Woman in Black, through I cannot remember when it was, but I think it was around about the early 80s. There was an H.R. Giger-inspired production of King Lear at the other place in Stratford that just used these kind of sheer, harsh kind of electronics to kind of just create this incredibly alienating, isolating staging. And also, I've seen photos of it, and it looks like they really managed to pack as much gore as they could into the eye-gouging scene. I want to throw in as much as possible as I can to essentially make a live, on-stage witch trial that, within itself, is attempting to bring forth, and the preacher's aim is he wants to push this woman far enough that she brings forth the devil so that he can destroy the devil. And I just want to see how much I can actually push the audience to the point of... I think there's no other way to put this other than I want to see with this show how far I can go before I'm actually breaking the Geneva Convention.
So you want to do an exorcism in a church?
Yeah, it's kind of part live exorcism, witch trial, torture event that also should not be seen by anyone with a weak heart or epilepsy.
Wow, that does sound terrifying.
I think it's something definitely available at the Fringe.
Yeah. And, yeah, it can bring within to it, obviously, I don't know if this is the text of the actual story, I was trying to find it, but I've got to be honest, I couldn't find it for free, and I'm cheap. But, so I don't know if this subtext is in the story, but I also want to bring within to it this kind of fact that I've been listening to a podcast recently about the phenomena of hysteria, and how essentially witch trials are believed to have partially started because women showed signs of epilepsy, and were essentially people didn't know how to handle or treat fits, so they assumed it was the work of the devil in these women and killed them. And I kind of want to make this as much a story about terrifying the English back out of Scotland as it is about a tale of how kind of men willfully abuse the rights of women and potentially haven't got that much better about not doing it in the last 300 years.
I can get behind that. I have one question. If you're finished with your pitch,
Yeah.
Are you making people pay to see this, or is it a free show?
I feel like even if it's a free show, you're still paying in some form or another.
So it's a free show.
Yeah, but there may be an emotional toll.
Yeah, free, monetarily free.
Yeah,
Cool.
financially free with a bucketing. In terms of your soul, it will hurt if I've done my job right.
Especially if you're the one being exercised in an active church. Anybody else got any questions?
So it's an exorcism on stage.
In answer to your question, Sean, yes.
Yes, I mean
Beth?
it's a good idea.
Wow, is that legal to do? I didn't think that would be legal to do.
No, not
Well-
strictly.
Well,
It's acting.
yeah, it's. I should make it clear that we're not actually going to be committing, there will be no acts of stigmata performed during this. This is not going to go as far as to actually carve up women.
No, because I didn't think churches would legal's a bit too strong, but I didn't think churches would let you do that.
No, but also I did want to establish that I have thought about kind of like my first kind of big thing I want to throw at the audience is that essentially I kind of want to have someone coming out. It's almost a bit like kind of, Sean, your rug pulling of it being Van Helsing. I want there to be someone comes out and they've got kind of like a slightly naff looking like kind of prop twisty neck on top of their real head, and you can see them like that, and people are like, that's a pretty bad effect. And then they pull off a cloth that's where this kind of like puppet head is, and we reveal an intensely grotesque prosthetic that Thrawn Janet is wearing of this twisted neck underneath, just to immediately throw people off.
Joe,
Yeah?
are you okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, I didn't get to go out for Halloween last year. I've been saving all this up.
That's a very good point. That is a very good point. We do need to exercise the Halloween out of us.
Look, we all need to purge our Halloween occasionally.
Yeah. How many performers are you thinking of having in this? Is this like ensemble to the max, or is it like limited?
I was thinking most likely a two-hander involving the preacher and Thrawn Janet, and then using kind of I was probably, in terms of the devil, just going to use the standard of kind of lighting effects and shadows to kind of, and sound, just to make the feeling of a presence there. Because I always think that kind of things where they indicate the presence of some kind of demonic figure is more effective in terms of generating terror than actually trying to do it. Because otherwise you need someone of that kind of stature, and it then feels like you're just casting. What if you find someone who is the right build but they can't act? What if you find somebody who's great for the performance but physically they don't look imposing enough? It's just easier to do shadows, isn't it?
Yeah, I think I really like that idea. I really like to go see that.
What a strange show, Joe. I don't know.
I mean, it's also one of those things where you're like, oh, no, I probably have seen something similar like that at the Fringe.
Yeah, I have.
And it's one of those shows that you avoid telling people who have never been to the Fringe about because you don't want to scare them.
You don't want them to be like, yeah, I think that was my last theatre show.
Yeah.
I think it's time to call it a day.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's it called, Joe? Is it called Nightmare?
No, the show is just called Thrawn Janet.
Okay.
So I get that, because then anybody who's Scottish, or at least knows Scottish heritage and stories, could probably figure out not to go.
Yeah. By the way, I thought you'd like to know that in terms of things, interesting fact about this, because I did my research actually this week. Thrawn Janet is meant to be set around 1712, which means that it probably took place over there were 4 major witch hunts across Scotland between the late 1500s and the mid 1700s, which means that this was probably located around about the 3rd major witch hunt. Just an interesting fact.
You'd learn something every day.
Back with Jen.
Okay. That, Joe, thank you.
You're welcome.
Learning with Joe. Scaring with Joe. Beth, would you like to go next, or would you like to go last?
I didn't realise we'd started again, Jem. I just thought you were rambling.
No, I'm professional. I'm starting
Okay, Jem.
again.
I'm cool.
I don't mind my time, but I'm happy to go next.
Okay, go ahead.
You seem enthralled.
I'm still reeling from Joe's exorcism in a church, really.
I know. And to be honest, I know I was very cocky when we started this, but I think I might have been B. No, I don't know why you're nodding, Sean. I didn't mean by you. I definitely meant by you. But I'm going to give it my best shot.
Cutting that out.
So, mine is going to be two-handed puppetry, horror, and it's going to be all music-led. So I say two-handed, there's two performers, and then there's live musicians on stage kind of circling it around, who are going to be just constantly there playing. And it's going to be the two performers telling the story of Thrawn Janet. So it's going to start with them on stage, audience coming in, they're going to be mingling, kind of like just street performers that we all see at the Fringe. And then there's going to be a shadow or a silhouette as if a door's opened, and it's going to be the old preacher, and he tells them to shut up and just go home. And then the two performers tell the audience why he has become like this. And kind of change the story, so it's like really, really dark. It was dark anyway. Now it's more dark. And basically, Janet was this girl that came to town. She was really pretty. All the wives got really, really jealous of her, so they started to spread rumours that she was an unwed whore and doing her thing. The preacher was new to town. He got a bit of a crush on her, but he's a man of the cloth, so he couldn't do anything about it. And then over time, he develops feelings for her, and she starts working for him, and he takes her in after she's attacked by the husband of the woman that she's renting a room from, and he makes advances on her. She says no, and then she finds out that she really likes women because he catches her kissing another woman. I know, see, now you're intrigued. Yeah. And so then he goes nuts, and he plants a witch's book on her, and then it's found when she's out in town one day, and then they arrest her, and they're trying to drown her and try her as a witch. And so he basically threatens her and says that if she doesn't marry him, he's going to make sure that she does die. And so she does marry him, but little does he know that he didn't actually have to plant that book on her, because she really was a fucking witch. So she curses him, and then she hangs herself, and that's how she twists her neck. So it all comes back to being Thrawn Janet. And then he's now haunted by her. And basically, as the two performers are telling the story, they're moving the audience around to different parts, which are like different little blocks where it happens. And then they're just let out, and there's going to be music, and it's all going to be very dark and silhouette-y, and the puppets are all going to be from the performers' backpacks, and it's all going to be trash and rubbish that they then make into things. So yes, and that is the show.
I'd 100% go and watch that show.
Yeah.
I'd be like at work, like, oh, it's so good, and then like the puppets are trash, came out of their bag. I'm like, it's such amazing. And then I'll be like, and then she was a witch. Who saw that fucking coming?
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah, my idea wasn't as good as that.
No.
It was.
No, I really like that.
I like
I
it.
can imagine that being like at the Pleasance. I can imagine that actually being like you'd pay to see that.
I agree, Pedro, but I was thinking that had a real kind of like late night at the Underbelly feel to me.
Yes, I was thinking more Underbelly.
Yeah, see, I was between the two, because I was thinking the Pleasance, or because I've seen shows at the Underbelly, and it seems more like that kind of thing. But I love the Pleasance, and that would be
So the musicians, they're playing while the audience are coming in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are the puppeteers on stage as well?
Yeah. So everyone is in there as if like they are just street performers. So they're like interacting, asking for money.
I like that.
And they're like playing music, like saying like, oh, if you pay me, then I can do any song you want. Any song you want. What do you want? You want Ed Sheeran? You want this? Like, yeah, that's cool. I can do whatever you want. And then as it settles into, well, basically when the silhouette of the preacher is there, that's when the musicians kind of step back and the performers take over. And the performers are kind of, because they're not making it up as they go along, but they're doing it. It should be like they're doing it in real time. So they're like telling the musicians like, oh, play, like do something for her getting caught. And then they're like, and then they do the puppetry of that.
Oh, I really like that.
I really like that. I want to see that. Like, I want
Write
to
that
produce
down,
that.
Beth.
Write it down.
It's over 5 pages, and I already started writing scenes.
Yay! I need to make
So,
this happen.
just to make it, just in case, do you want to do just a quick bad pitch that we can edit in, just in case you don't want this getting out?
Okay, I can make one up.
Yeah, just so Sean's got something to cut in case we need to cut this out. Yeah.
So basically, Thrawn Janet, it's set in LA, and it's all about this old man who got on a cruiser and he was trying to get from Scotland down to Dublin, but he got on the wrong cruiser and he's ended up in LA, and now he has to sell shoestring dolls that he makes out of old shoes that he finds littered on the streets. And it's basically just that. And that was my idea for Thrawn Janet. I really think it gets in the horror and
See,
none of us like
sorry, I thought we asked you to do a bad pitch. I
was
still
about
want
to
to see
say-
that show.
I was about to say, I'm about to follow this, and if I wasn't nervous before, I am now super nervous because I'm about to pitch something that I'm really proud of, but is still, I think, worse than that improv.
Is it set in LA, Gemma?
No, but it is wildly different from everything everybody said.
I'm excited to hear it. I think it would be brilliant.
What are you putting a GoPro on this week? On a ghost!
If I could go pro up a ghost, I would, and we know this. Okay, before I start, any other questions for Beth?
It's not so much a question beyond. I just wanted to say that I actually I know you came into this very competent, and I can see why that was really good. It reminded me of like one of the shows I remember from the last Fringe I was at seeing that I really liked was a thing called The 3 Deaths of Ebony Black. That it was it was a puppet musical, essentially about the kind of philosophical theory of the 3 deaths, which are the time you breathe your last breath, when your body is laid to rest, and the last time anyone ever speaks your name. And it was a thing that it took a kind of fundamentally a premise that seemed quite kind of zany in the light of it being a puppet farce, and then just layered more and more layers of melancholy and bittersweetness upon it. And it just became kind of truly heart-wrenching at the end of it. And I kind of like the idea that this seems like, oh, there's live musicians, there's puppets being made live on stage, that sounds fun. And then people don't expect it to actually be a queer romance
Fringe.
/ horror.
Yeah. I really got into the gothicness of just that story, and then I thought, well, because stories always like they come from somewhere, but they're changed over years and years and years and years. And so I thought, well, where could this story that's written down, if I imagine it being originated somewhere else, where could it have actually come from?
I really like that. I really, really like it. And I think I've got a job for you in let's make a show together. Yay! After we forget about my pitch. I'm not strapping GoPros to anything this time. But hey, in the spirit of virtual fringes, it could be live streamed, I guess. So my thing when I saw this is I went, oh, finally, here's an article that has a narrative. But you know what? I don't feel like narrative drama this week, so I'm gonna chuck it out the window. And the thing that I got really, really attached to is I am a massive, massive, massive fan of the supernatural. And I'm a massive, massive fan of Sean's reaction. I'm a huge fan of the supernatural and of supernatural stories, as well as I'm a huge fan of Stevenson. He wrote Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, or Mr. Hyde and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. My brain's panicking because I'm like, I'm having to follow all of this stuff. So I got really into this idea of being able to tell lots of different horror stories, lots of different supernatural stories. And when I was reading, especially the synopsis of Thrawn Janet, I was kind of like, you know, there is such a commentary here where the devil is explicitly made out to be a black person, and the witch is just somebody who's independent and mouthy and a woman, so she's a witch. And these things of being individuals, and it's such a social commentary, especially for the time that it was being written, especially for, you know, and it's still relevant in some way today. And my brain got off on an academic rant about the supernatural. So I thought, inspired kind of by skeptics on the Fringe, and the idea that you can get really niche and really step outside of theatre but still stay within live performance and still stay within theatre. My show concept is this. For 23 days on the trot, because I also thought, what would I be able to do for 23 days on a trot and not want to blow my brains out at the back end of it with? A comedian is paired up with, I'm going to call them a thinker rather than an academic, because I don't think they have to be an academic, but somebody who is well versed in storytelling. Each day it's a different supernatural story, so you can include Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and it starts with Thrawn Janet. And you've got a comedian and a thinker discuss this supernatural story. So the comedian's job is to try and make it entertaining. The academic's job is to try and break it down into what it actually is. But you've also got the storytelling element in there of telling the story of what they're talking about. So you've got Van Helsing, you've got Dracula is one of the big ones as well. You've Thrawn Janet, and go really niche into the supernatural stories. Rather than just sticking with things like, oh yeah, Dracula, you know, going really into, you know, everybody knows Dracula, but do you actually know the real story of Nosferatu, and where that kind of comes from? And especially in the setting of Edinburgh, it's, you know, there are even local horror stories of why Edinburgh is on 2 levels and how they just bricked people up during the plague. And that links back to the supernatural because they thought the plague was a supernatural phenomenon. They thought the devil was coming and marking you, and so they just brick your house up. So kind of academic, kind of thinky, entertaining because of the comedian and the storytelling elements, but something that I think could spark those kinds of thoughts of not just going, oh, this is a fun story, but also, oh, this is a fun story that kind of speaks to the fears of people and the thoughts of people and the trends within society, and getting a little bit thinky about it. And anywhere on Nidri Street, I think any of those venues, so the Banshee Labyrinth or the Hive, I want it to be a free event because knowledge and thought should be free. So yeah, that's my pitch. Yeah, so like a part of the production process would kind of be almost cabaret-like, would be kind of going, hey, here's this thing, we've got, you know, you've got your network of comedian friends that you're pulling in to do it, but you also, as you go along and you go, oh, here is an amazing comedian, hey, do you have a moment, like a day where at the time of the show you're free, do you want to come on board, do this thing, you know, and finding people along the way, as well as scheduling people that you already know, as well as like, because the reason I use thinkers rather than academics is you can get a lot of amazing academics, but you can also get a lot of amazing thought out of the everyday person, you know, and the person who loves the supernatural, or the writer who has written Dracula, or not Bram Stoker, but an adaptation, you know, and you can even go and say...
It would be difficult to get him.
It would be a different show, I would admit. But it's also a case of like, I would sit there and go, right, let's look through the Fringe program and let's see, you always tend to find these weird based in mythology or based in supernatural shows, and approach that show and say, hey, who's your director, who's your producer, who's your writer? Do you want to be part of this show? So it's a different lineup every day, and it's a different story every day, but you're getting told the story of Thrawn Janet, but then you're also having it embedded in this great improv comedy, but then also having that thought of going like, it's this discussion, it's this bit of storytelling, and then a discussion between a thinker and a comedian on this story, because some of the supernatural stories are so funny if you actually start to think hard on them. Some of them are terrifying. But yeah.
I really like that. I would see that at the Fringe, because I love Fringe shows that are different all the time. It's always going to be that the structure is the same, but just you're always going to see somebody different, and there's going to be a different idea. I would go see that more than once.
Yeah, and like the producer brain's like, yes, ka-ching! And then also going, wait, it's a free show. But then for me, it's also, there's a big part of when you're at the Fringe, if you're doing a full run, that's 23, 25 days solid. No break. And so you're going to walk away from that run hating whatever you're doing. So what can you do and how much fun can you have? And you either pick something that you know you could talk about every single day for the rest of your life and not get bored, which the supernatural is that for me. Or you do something that you can be a little bit more flexible in, or continuously improve yourself in, and things like that to try and keep it not dull as hell.
Like chess.
Yeah, like chess. So
I think we can all agree chess would be a great basis for a show, actually, as like a game.
And I'm going to shut down the borderline self-promotion that these guys are going to
I don't know what you're on about. We're not ready to announce the show, Jen.
I have to say, the second you went, oh, I really like the supernatural, I instantly thought, oh my god, she's gonna do supernatural on stage. She's gonna do, what is it, the Winchester lads?
The Winchester brothers.
On stage. I was like, oh no, here we go.
If we could get that featuring / starring Jensen Ackles and Jared Padalecki, I would be there every moment of every freaking day.
Yeah,
I would pass out.
No one would watch that though, Gemma. No one would watch that because no one watches it, and that's why it's been cancelled.
It wasn't cancelled, they just ended it.
Yeah, because no one was watching.
No, because they've been doing it for 15 years.
To shut down this argument before it goes anywhere further, I will say this thought did cross my mind. I also want to say, Jem, I do like the fact that every episode, I think we discover a new thing that you claim to love.
I am diverse, okay?
But also, I did want to ask a question, and to push on my pretentious brain again for a second, like that's not been on for this entire podcast. Basically, I think there's a lot of theories that state that the most base of all fears is that they are all fundamentally rooted, all horror is rooted in the fear of the unknown. Mm-hmm. Is there a risk that by introducing the kind of the academic, not the academics, but the academic element to it, that in explaining horror you are reducing its power?
Okay, so in the face of potentially making this really boring, most of that fear that comes out of the unknown is anxious fear, because anxiety is closely linked to uncertainty. But when you look into deeper, especially niche horror and niche more supernatural, this is why I wasn't like it's horror. It is supernatural. Is that not every supernatural story is horrific. Not every supernatural story is about horror. But there's a lot of cross-cultural differences in, like, for example, the position of ghosts within Japanese and Asian culture is incredibly different to Western culture. Western culture, ghosts are feared. Japanese culture, they are revered. Except for a handful of ones which are genuinely terrifying and can eat you. And it's like, it's not a fear of the unknown, it's a fear of dying horribly. So I think when you start to engage with people who actually, and this is why talking to the universities and getting academics on board and writers so that you have these different perspectives, you can actually start to drill down into that. I don't think that you would I don't think you'd run up against too much commonality in the fundamental things that people are playing with in horror and supernatural that it would get boring. But yes, you do reduce horror by explaining it and understanding it, but I have a deep set understanding of the supernatural and things like that. But don't you dare mention the word Mary and bloody in opposite order near me 3 times and near a mirror, because I will freak out.
Wait, sorry, what was that, Jen? Bloody Mary?
No, it's not.
What'd you say, Joe? Bloody Mary?
Oh yeah, I did say Bloody Mary.
This is playing with fire.
Yeah.
Beetlejuice.
Yeah, I was about to say kind of, and it's like they do argue that technically you could argue the camera lens is something of a mirror. Candyman.
Oh, he's the worst one.
Joe, you've gone too far.
See?
So, Joe, your show
I'm
is
just
like
trying to get him on the podcast. There's the remake coming out this year. He's big.
We haven't got a guest for next week, Jim.
Yeah, Candyman, if you're watching, please come on the pod.
I'm so
So
glad
your
that it's
show
in
is
phone.
like, it's like a lecture with a comedian, and you're talking about like classic. You're talking about really like
Supernatural
the characters that everyone knows.
Yeah.
She's not breaking down the unknown, Joe, because she's talking about Dracula. We all know Dracula at this point, so it's fine.
Personally.
You know what I mean?
Actually, she made it clear she's not talking about Dracula. We're talking
No,
about
she
niche
said-
horror. MC
Nosferatu.
But where it comes from, like Nosferatu and all of that stuff, I don't think it would break the unknown, because there's a certain amount with this kind of genre of unexplainability in it, because there's so many different ways to do it, and horror's been. I mean, there's so many ghost films, and the reason there are so many films featuring ghosts is because there's so many different ways to do it. So I don't think it would really shatter. It wouldn't put peek behind the curtain at all. I think it would, and I would go watch it multiple times. It would probably be one of those shows that I would try and go and see as often as I could, just to see.
What's everybody's favourite ghost film?
Ooh. To be honest, I know a lot about ghosts, but I don't know if I have a favourite ghost film.
Then just say one, Gemma, so we can keep the pod going.
In terms of
Ghostbusters!
I was going to say there was a
okay.
recent one that was just called A Ghost Story that is
Ghost
actually
Story.
very good.
Beth?
Like I think it's called Trick or Treat, but it's like Trick or Treat.
Mine's
Oh, that's a good
Casper.
one, yeah.
Casper! Is this the 90s one with Christina
In
Ricci?
the 90s one. Have they remade Casper?
Was it 90s or was it
The one with Hilary Duff when she was a little one, and then there is one with Christina.
Ricci?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one that I like.
Oh, I love when they're dancing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it becomes like real for a little bit, but then
Yeah.
it's good.
Yeah.
It's a good film. It's a good film. I also like Ghost.
Yeah, I was
That's
thinking
a good
Ghost.
film.
But still never class it as a ghost film, because
It's called Ghost.
no, but it doesn't feel like a ghost film, because it's all just like they're making clay and they're in love, and then he happens to get shot, and it's. But I don't really see him as a ghost.
Spoilers.
If you don't know what happens at Ghost at this
Okay.
point,
I think we can all agree the statute of limitations on spoilers is not 30 years.
No.
And Ghost is over 30 years old.
Oh, wow.
I'm
You
pretty
just-
certain.
Okay, so.
and on that bombshell,
There you go. Thank you for stealing my line, which is stolen from someone else, which we really need to do some psychotherapy into understanding why I reference Top Gear so much.
Maybe that's the show. We do an exorcism of Jeremy Clarkson from
No.
Gem.
no, we do. It's the Stig. We get the Stig on stage and we take the devil out of him.
And the devil is just a ginger.
I did always wonder why you couldn't see anything through his visor. It's because the devil's in there.
Okay, so.
That's why you can always stick to the racing line. He's not human.
So we have a show from Sean where a stand-up comedian gets possessed, and it's actually not a stand-up show. Pull the rug out from the audience's feet. Yeah. We also, I was prepping myself and starting to think about Joe's show, which is still shooketh from that. Joe's show, which is a live exorcism in a church. Beth's amazing show with puppets and live music, and this beautiful telling of Thrawn Janet that we are not going to continue to remind you of because we are probably going to produce that one. And then my thinky, funny storytelling comedian delve into various different supernatural stories, starting with Thrawn Janet. Those have been the pitches. Let us know in...
Gemma?
Yes.
You know, before you end this podcast,
Mm-hmm.
can I just just take it for a little bit? Do you remember there's an ongoing joke over the podcast about what you used to be like in seminars? And I joke that, you'd be the person at the end saying, oh, if you want to do more reading as well, you've got these books, and these books. Oh, these are really interesting. No, this is Gemma. This is Gemma. And Gemma's always like, oh no, I was never like that in our seminar. No, I was never like that. I just got on. I never said anything extra about books. Now, Beth, as someone who was in them seminars, and I've been waiting for this for a while.
I thought I managed to close the podcast before you did this.
No. Do you remember what Gemma was like in the seminars with Gareth?
Gareth. Oh, those. No, I remember. I don't remember her saying it to like the whole. I remember you were always really well read. You always knew your shit. You knew what you were talking about, and you knew more than was required to be known. And I remember the suggesting reading thing, but you didn't do it like to the whole class. I remember like someone would be talking to you, and then you would say to them, "Oh, well, if like I read this and it talked about this." That's what I remember.
I like the way that's the kindest way anybody's told me I'm a fucking nerd before.
No, you're just. There's nothing wrong with being smart. Nothing wrong with being.
Oh no. But the way the way Sean always comes out with it is sort of in that way of kind of going, well, actually, I read this book on this thing.
You were just like, you always had really interesting points because you'd read more than any of us. I was lucky if I came with the recommended reading.
You'd read it.
The big secret is that, like, outside of maybe the first 1 or 2 seminars, I never did any of the recommended reading. I just did all of the other reading, and that's the secret if you want to seem smart, is look like you've gone the extra level and just read the stuff you're interested in. And then, like, just vaguely pull out the bullet points and have confidence that you can pull off faking that you've read the stuff already, and then just distract by talking about the extra stuff, and then people think you're smart. It's all just a play. It's theatre.
That's my favourite page, and if I hadn't done the reading, I'd like go right big page and then go done, and then I'd pick out the quote and be like, right, that's what I'm making my point about today, and that's what I did. Got away with it. Hey, got it first. I was that close.
Yeah, this is what we paid thousands of pounds for. Well, I thought I'd managed to close the podcast before Sean tried to gather his evidence, but thank you, Beth, for being wonderfully amazing about that and confirming Sean's point, but in a more lovely way. No, I've never claimed that I didn't do extra reading. I just, I didn't realise I had been such a pretentious prick